Hello, this is a Bluthner style 8-gram piano made in 1894, 6 foot 3 inches long. Just come back into stock. It was in stock 2 years ago and we rented it out for 2 years. I just come back in and I made a video then actually of it. I just want to sort of few afterthoughts and be going through the touch and the tone of the piano. I have a few thoughts about that. Now the piano was apparently sold by Harrods in 1961. Obviously that's not the original sale, and Harrods have repolished it at that stage. They mentioned this before, they did a kind of polishing which was popular at the time, but it's hidden over the original grain, and we've got videos of where we repolish these pianos, and it's very, very common for us to repolish these. The grain is much more contrasting when it's repolished, but it is very tasteful anyway, and there's the odd blemish here and there, but the colour is all integral, so it's no sort of particular fading on it. This may be slightly different colour from here, but I think there's no fade line on the piano, which is you often get when you pull the lid up and you see a fade line. But you can see the type of finish they put on it. But there's a wonderful figured rosewood grain underneath this, which we'd love to redo, but obviously that's expensive. It's 70 hours work to repolish the piano. We're just about to do another one for a client that we've sold. Perhaps get a better idea of the grain on the fall here, which is quite figured, as you can see. So the whole piano will end up looking like that, very figured. So it's worth doing. This is a 1904 style 7. Really, the pianos are as good as each other, slightly different tone, as I'll try and show you in a minute. But this is style 7, meaning that it's not Aliquot scaling. Again, that was sold by Harrods apparently in 1965. Harrods also put their plaque on this one, which they normally do, but it's not on the one we're assessing for some reason. This has not got Aliquot scaling. If you look, there are 3 strings per note here, and we'll have a look at the other piano. So on the 1894 one, you've got 4 strings per note. You've got 3 here, and then 1 extra high one, which is like brings out kind of harmonics. I think most tuners would say it doesn't make a lot of difference, though perhaps just get extra zing. So you see these extra kind of like agraphs that the string has to go through as well. This was restored also by Bluthner themselves in apparently 1985. I've actually got the paperwork that shows that and what they did, and you'll see if you look on the left here, it's typical of Bluthner's to put it's Whelpdale, Waxwell and Codd, it's at Wellmar in the UK, but basically they were the Bluthner connection, and they imported all the Bluthners from Germany, so they did a very large number of restorations on Bluthner grand pianos. We very often got them in. So 1929 on this particular badge, but of course the piano is really 1894. Now just briefly, the other video shows you more detail of this. So you've got the rest plank exposed, so you can see that Bluthner have changed that. That's the wood underneath here. You can see the new dampers, and just very beautifully restored. Now this piano's at concert pitch and hasn't been retuned since it came back in. Incredibly stable pianos, Bluthner grand pianos, and a very rich, warm tone. Now here's the style 7, 1904. Very similar tone. Back to the 1894. Equally good, just slightly different. Now, equally important is the touch weight, and this has got a touch weight about 54 grams. If you're a serious musician, that might be fine, but if you are an occasional player, just want to really enjoy the piano, you might want it a bit lighter. I'm just tapping the bottom, and that should just start to go down. There's a very slight unevenness too. Those are just about to go down with 54 grams. Let's try there. And as you go up the keyboard, it should be slightly lighter anyway. So let's try that C there. Just beginning to go down again. And down the bottom end, slightly heavier. But the 1904 style 7 goes down straight away with this 54 grams. So that's obviously lighter. Let's take 2 grams off and see what happens. And it's still going down. Let's take 4 grams off. And so this is 48 grams, and it's just about to start going down to put the 2 grams back on. That's 50 grams. The 50 grams would be the norm really, and that's just going down at 50 grams, maybe slightly less. I think they've slight variety. I've done a video of this piano earlier. It's very slight variety, so that needs just evening off a bit. That one's a bit lighter, as you can see, and this one, so that's about 48 to 50 grams, and that's ideal for if you sort of an occasional player just really like to enjoy it and don't want to have to work terribly hard. Now my colleague pointed out to me that it's very tight here, and I noticed that really the centre pin's very, very tight, and that if we lubricated that, which we use dry lubricant, that's either talc or Teflon, and that will bring that will cause this to move more freely. You mustn't open underneath there as a hole. Can't show you at the moment, but that's lubricated. I've had a video showing that. They have re-weighted the keys here when they put new hammers on, but possibly after the lubrication we still need to add a bit of weight to bring it down to the correct weight, which we want between 48 and 50. By the way, this is a Bluthner patent action. We have other videos explaining that. Very, very different from a normal action. So there's a modern roller action with what we call a repetition lever, and that's not on the Bluthner patent action. So you see, very different. Bluthner's from about, I think certainly 1880, right through to 1919, apparently, fitted patent actions, and then they did the normal roller action after that. So there was obviously a very good reason for doing it. It does feel very, very pleasant to play, very smooth. Doesn't quite repeat as well as the repetition lever, but for really it's not much different, and no real problem. The action is extremely reliable. Just looking at the hammers here, you see there's one shank being changed. That very often happens when the hammers are changed. They'll have to replace the shank, maybe it breaks on the way through. There's another shank there. That's a common sign, nothing to worry about. It means that someone's changed the hammers, and these I think are Renner hammers. I'm not certain, but probably Renner hammers. Well, I think sort of 99%. So let's say they are, and there's a slight indentation since it's been done, but not that much wear really, say an hour a day for 3 or 4 years maybe. So since 1985, when it was finished off, not a lot done. There's by the way, for those who haven't seen it before, the set-off buttons at the back here on these, and that's what makes it a lot smoother when you play. I'll try and play that. You can see it setting off. Sorry, you probably can't see very well on this. It's there. Well, let's try that one. And it sets off at the back there, and so it just feels a bit smoother actually than a normal action. So that's Bluthner Style 8 grand piano, made in 1894, 6 foot 3 inches long. Just come back into stock, having been rented out for 2 years. When we first bought it, we then rented it for a couple of years to someone who wanted a grand piano. I think maybe an academic visitor. That's very common in Oxford. Now it's come back in. I've reassessed it, and I do feel that the key dip, I'd like to increase that slightly. It's about 9mm, which is actually official Bluthner, but I think even Bluthners nowadays, or rather their restorers, restore it to 11mm, which is normal, and it just feels you're not quite getting enough power and not quite enough depth, and keyboards are all set at about 10.5 or 11mm, so this is about 9. It needs to go down a bit further, so that's just taking some of the felt, or rather some of the washers from underneath there, and then it'll feel a lot nicer. The one that we've compared it to, the Style 7, has about 10.5 to 11, so that'll feel to me a lot better. And also then the touch, it's a bit heavy, about 54 grams. We'd like to take it down to 48 to 50 grams, as the other one is too. And then that would be wonderful. And a little bit of voicing, but really the tone is magnificent. We've mentioned that on many other videos, so I won't go on too long about that. But it does everything, and very mellow compared to a modern piano. And of course the patent action means that you can't quite repeat as fast, but for my playing it doesn't really matter. If you're playing Rhapsody in Blue all day long, then that would be probably a problem. But I think for general playing is very, very good, and the touch is wonderfully smooth. So there are lots of fans of Bluthner patent actions. with very good reason. They made them from about 1880 to 1919, so obviously a lot of people did like them a lot. There's such a solid tone in the bass. There is unsurpassed, as many of the people who've commented on the videos, many technicians agree, that there's nothing quite like a Bluthner tone. It's just something inexplicable. Thank you very much for listening.